Hello everyone, my name is Samyuddin Athar. So I'm here to give you an introduction regarding the export and import seminar, webinar. And in this thing, I'm just trying to make a video regarding how this thing happens, if you are an agent, or it's like, let us say, a primary agent, or it's like just an agent, and you want to deal between two companies like buyer and supplier, and you are in the middle. Okay, so buyer is the end user, that is the end buyer, and on the other hand you have a supplier who is basically manufacturer. He can be a manufacturer or he can be directly a trader. So let us say you are a single person, and how you are going to make this deal, and apart from that, how you are going to lose this deal. So mostly how a deal is done, and how a deal is collapsed. So let us say I'm going to take an example of sugar, and here you are. So let us carry on with the overview. So export and import international trade overview. For this thing, this is just an introductory seminar, introductory class, and I'm going to teach this thing. So basically, there is a supplier, and he has this commodity. Let us say he has this sugar, and there is another end buyer, and he is looking for sugar. So these people don't know each other. These companies, this supplier of this sugar product, he doesn't know the buyer, and the buyer, he does not know the supplier, but he has a requirement, the buyer has a requirement for sugar. Let us say the requirement is 100 tons. Requirement is for 100 tons. Required 100 tons of sugar, and this supplier, he is able to produce and supply this quantity of sugar, 100. Let us say he is able to produce nearly 1,000 tons. It does not matter until it is required only for 100 tons. But this supplier is able to make the production of 1,000 tons. So, and you are nowhere here, but you come to know about this requirement of the buyer, because you are here. You can get to know about this requirement from the buyer. Let us say you know the buyer, or it's like you have a list of people like these buyers. You have a list of suppliers, but these two guys don't know each other until now. And let us say this buyer is in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so most of there are many requirements, like the buyer can be anywhere, and the supplier, let us say the supplier is from India. He is a supplier, he is a manufacturer of sugar. Okay, and let us say you are from somewhere. It does not matter where you are from. As per international trade, primary agent and intermediary or a trader can, as per international export and import business, if you have a business, an export import license, then it is. I will go for that one in the next thing. But right now, let us say how the deal happens. This buyer is having the requirement for 100 tons of sugar, and here is the supplier is from India and the buyer is from Saudi Arabia. Let us say you are the agent and you come to know about this requirement of the buyer, and you know this supplier. Let us say you have searched for quite many suppliers who can provide this thing, and this supplier is based in India. Now the thing is like how you are going to do the deal between both of these. Okay, so now remember this thing, and I'm going to show you the next thing, like how a deal happens within the buyer and the supplier directly without you involvement. Okay, so the same is the thing, like an agent is mostly, as you know, an agent is a broker, can be called an agent, can be called a broker, can be called an intermediary. And can be called a buyer, can be called a seller, because actually what happens, if you have the cash, if you have the money, or it's like if you even do not have the money to buy this 100 tons of sugar from this supplier and you want to give to this one, so that happens without investing any money. So let us say, like, if you are an agent or a broker or an intermediary or a buyer or a seller, what happens is, without investing any money means, like, the deal is going to be done on the basis of letter of credit, because that is a very promising thing, and banks get involved in this thing, and there is no chance for any kind of cheating, and you are not going to lose any money from your side, and at the same time the buyer and the supplier both are happy, and you are going to do this thing with an LC, which the buyer issues to you, which is called one-time transferable letter of credit, and that transferable letter of credit you can issue return to the supplier name. Once it is issued from the buyer's bank on your name, and you issue that one to the supplier on his name, because that is why it is called like transferable letter of credit. That is one-time transferable letter of credit. Okay, so now here is the thing. The next thing what happens means, once the buyer is required this thing, and let us say you are not there in the scenario. Of course, I will say about when you are in the scenario, but now the buyer and the supplier, let us say they know each other. Happens. Let us say they know each other, and the buyer is communicating to the supplier, and the supplier is communicating to the buyer. How the deal happens is like, first the buyer sends an interest of his requirement of sugar to this supplier, from buyer to supplier. Once the supplier receives this thing, the supplier sends return. If the supplier agrees with this thing, the supplier will send a quotation. buyer, and the buyer accepts the quotation and in return replies to the supplier. So in return replies to the supplier based on the the quality and quantity and everything. So now, and this, because this is just an introduction, I'm going to go quite fast and going to show you how this deal happens. Let us say both are agreed. Both have agreed to, the buyer is agreed with the supplier's quotation and the price of the product, and the supplier is agreed to provide this quantity of sugar, 100 tons, within a time frame to Saudi Arabia, to reach to Saudi Arabia. Okay. So now what happens? The buyer and supplier. We have banks now. So that is a safe thing to deal in import and export business. It is best and 100% safe to deal on the basis of letter of credit, not like directly on the cash thing like that. Because let it be like, if you even know the supplier and the buyer, if the buyer knows the supplier knows the buyer, but still if the quantity, if it is like 100 tons and if it is like going for maybe 1 million real or something like that, or it's like let us say it's like 300,000 US dollars, or it's like any kind of thing. So there is a risky thing. So it is best to go on the basis of letter of credit, because banks get involved and you do not have to worry about this thing. It is a promissory thing that if the deal happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, then there is nothing like. But if you are going to transact money with some kind of another way, then that can be a problem. If the deal doesn't happen, the money is gone. That is the thing. So the buyer has an interest to buy the 100 tons of sugar from the supplier. Let us say that. So once the buyer is agreed and is happy, he communicates with the supplier, and the supplier says, okay, I'm going to provide you this thing. But now what happens? The buyer makes, as per the quotation and the agreement of the product and the price of this thing, everything, as per the contract, which the draft contract which the supplier has given to the buyer after the quotation is responded by the buyer, and as per with his acceptance. So the supplier gives the buyer a draft quotation of with the terms and conditions, like how it is going to be done. Once the draft is accepted with the supplier's signature on that one, once the draft is accepted by the buyer, then the buyer makes the letter of credit from the buyer's bank. That is nothing but, that is called the issuing bank. That is the issuance bank. Let us say the buyer has accepted the draft contract and is agreed with the supplier to take these goods. So another thing is like the supplier, he will sign this confirmation and agrees to provide the 100 tons of sugar to the buyer within a time frame. Okay, so let us say the time frame is, let us say it is like 60 days for the production of the sugar and for packing and everything to reach the buyer by the sea on the basis of FOB or CIF. So the buyer makes now LC. The buyer now goes to his bank. Let us say the buyer's bank is anything. It can be Riyadh Bank, or South Bank or Samba Bank. There are many banks. So the buyer has his business account, which is nothing but a current business account on the name of the business, and the buyer is having an account from one of these banks, any one of these banks. Let us say he has a account in Riyadh Bank, and there is a business account. So the buyer approaches the bank and asks the bank manager to open an LC, letter of credit, on the name of supplier, because here there is no agent and both are dealing directly with each other. This buyer, direct buyer is directly dealing with the end supplier, so there is no agent in here. Once the buyer opens LC, this LC has all the content, the contract terms and conditions written in the LC, like how the packing is going to be. For the sugar bags, like it's a 50 kg bag or a 25 kg bag or a 100 kg bag, and this 100 tons sugar, how they are going to be delivered, and how they are going to be inspected at the buyer's, at the supplier's place, and before loading onto the ship, how it is going to be inspected with any inspection agency or anything. There are many things that is written in this LC contract. So what happened means, now the buyer asks his bank manager to make the LC on this supplier company name, on the supplier name, with his account number, with the company business account number, and the same contract terms and conditions which the supplier has given before during the draft negotiation of the contract for the supply of the sugar to this buyer from India to Saudi Arabia. So once this LC has everything, what happens means, after the bank manager accepts and makes the LC, so the bank has come into the role of the business, because banks have their own percentage of profiting, because bank also has to make some money to go on with the business. So the bank also plays an important role in this thing, and they do this thing like that. So once the LC is prepared, what happens means, the supplier account number is there, everything is there. Now the buyer will send this LC, not the buyer, the bank will, the issuing bank, because the Riyadh Bank is nothing but issuing bank. Once the issuing bank is there, so the supplier's bank is nothing but the accepting bank. Let us say the supplier's accepting bank is State Bank of India, SBI, and maybe let us say the supplier's situation maybe in Maharashtra, Mumbai, or Kolkata, or Delhi, or Telangana, or like Kerala, anywhere. So SBI and SBI, let us say SBI Mumbai. Okay. What happens means, once this LC, this issuing bank makes the LC, they will communicate. Once this LC is prepared, the supplier is informed via the issuing bank will send this LC to the accepting bank directly. Once the accepting bank gets the LC from the issuing bank, this SBI bank will contact the supplier. supplier, and the SBI Bank will inform the supplier that okay, let us say the supplier name is something Mr. XYZ, and here is buyer ABC, Mr. ABC and Mr. XYZ. So the bank identifies this thing, the bank receives this courier from the LC, from this issuing bank, and once they receive this courier, they open it and they check it and they say, okay, this is the LC, and now they contact the manufacturer, the supplier of the sugar, and they say, okay, hey, Mr. XYZ, we have received an LC from the issuing bank, from the Bank of Riyadh, and this LC is on your name, and so it is a one-time transferable LC, that is one time transferable LC, that is one time transferable letter of credit. That means this LC can be transferred one time, only one time, to some other party name if they have to. If there is no, so one time transferable LC. So once this SBI Bank receives this thing, so they inform the supplier of this thing that they have received an LC from Riyadh Bank, and they ask him to take action on that one. What happens? Now this supplier is informed, and he will start preparing for the arrangement and for production and for the the documentation of everything once. So let us say we receive the LC. The next thing is the supplier will now it is the role of supplier. The buyer has issued the LC, so one thing is completed. LC is issued to supplier. Supplier's bank, or let us say supplier's bank, SBI Bank, which is nothing but the accepting bank. Now the thing is like, now it is on supplier's part to do his role, what he has promised already in the contract, business contract, during the draft and the final contract, on which the supplier agreed that he will provide this product, sugar, to the buyer. Now the supplier will make the production, the supplier will make production of 100 tons of sugar, and then now the supplier, once he is done the production, let us say it has taken some kind of 15 days to do this thing, and as per we have told that it was like 60 days to reach to Saudi Arabia, so 15 days is the production time, and remaining 15 days, let us say, for arrangement and to make the other formalities for packing and everything, and checking with another third party inspection agency, etc., etc. Let us say I am taking 60 days duration, sometimes it can be 45 days or it's like 75 days, depending. It depends on the buyer's requirement, like how early he wants. He can have it by 60 days. If he says like 60 days is fine, or it's like if he says like maybe 75 days is fine, or 45 days is fine, or 55 days. So now the production has been done for the sugar. Now what the supplier will do is like, he will transport to the port. How this will occur? Transport all these 100 tons of sugar to the port. Now at the port, after it's transported, let us say he has transported some kind of like whatever this transport way of, like maybe in a truck or something like that. So 100 tons of sugar has been transported properly in the proper baggages in the way it was like given in the contract with the LC in the same way. Now this LC is on his name, on the supplier name. Supplier is happy and he is transporting the 100 tons of sugar in packages. Let us say if it is a 20-ton trailer, then it takes like maybe 5 trailers to transport 100 tons. If it is a 40-ton trailer, then it can take about 3 trailers for 40 tons to transport these 100 tons of sugar to the port area. I mean, like to load on the ship. Transportation is done, and now it has went to the ships. This is the ship. Now there will be C&F agent for the ship, cost and freight agent, the captain of the ship, everybody. So once this 100 tons of sugar is reached over here, there can be inspection agency if the buyer needs inspection agency. If inside the LC, while making the LC, if the buyer has asked the supplier to provide an inspection video clip, it's like a provide an inspection stamp on the 100 tons of sugar, then the supplier has to do it as per the LC, as per the letter of credit LC norms. So this supplier and will be providing near the ship, and this inspection agency, they will arrive based on the advice from the buyer or the supplier, and they will do the job on the set time once the 100 tons of sugar has reached to the port area. Before loading to the ship, this inspection agency will do its job. They will check the packaging, how it is, like if there is a damage, if the sugar is as per the required if the sugar is as per the requirement as from the buyer's side, and the quality and the quantity, everything will be checked before loading this 100 tons of sugar on the ship. Also the cost and freight agent will also be there. Once this thing is done in the inspection agency and checked, okay, it is proper, and they say okay, so now it will be loaded on the ship. So while loading on the ship, after, let us say the inspection is completed and that is done, so now documents will be provided from the ship's captain, and with the ship captain, ship mate, you can say, also like ship captain, they sign on the bill of lading, and they provide that the inspection is done. So once this is ongoing, the inspection agency will take a video clip, or if you have the access, the supplier will also try to get it, some kind of video clip and this one. So the delivery documents to the ship is being given by the C&F agent, which is nothing but a clearance and forwarding agent, or it's like cost and freight agent, you can say that. So this CFN agent will provide the transportation document to the supplier back. Once the supplier will have these documents, once the supplier has these documents, he will now go and visit his own bank, which is nothing but the accepting bank. He will visit the SBI bank, whichever branch he has, like SBI Bank of the Mumbai, and near where he has his own business account. He will visit that bank, and he will ask this accepting bank to that these documents I mean like the sugar has been delivered on the ship. Now the bank will check the documents. The bank will not check physically. They will not come and check if the sugar is loaded on the ship or else not, because as per the contract, the final contract, and the bank doesn't care if what has happened is everything is okay, this thing or not. The bank only considers what documents is needed as per the LC, and if these documents are proper. So these documents are proper, that can be done only with the help of the inspection agency and with the help of the C&F agent and the captain. Once the delivery documents are given to the supplier will also try to get these documents in a soft copy, and he will take this clip. Also on the side, he will provide this thing, this clip in his own manner via email or it's like through any social media channel, it's like WhatsApp or anything, and he will send these documents in a soft copy also to the buyer in, let us say, as we said, like in Saudi Arabia. So now the supplier has given that one, but SBI Bank, because it has accepted the LC, it will wait for this thing, for the delivery documents. So once the delivery documents are provided in the original to the SBI Bank, and this documents, one copy, the supplier will also keep it with himself, one copy, but the originals he will provide to the SBI Bank. So the SBI Bank in return will send these documents via courier to Riyadh Bank. So in Saudi Arabia, so the SBI Bank will send these documents via courier, documents to Riyadh Bank, KSA, as per the branch. Let us say the Riyadh Bank and the buyer is in Riyadh, and there is a branch. So as per the address of that one, it will send it to the Riyadh Bank in Riyadh. This is done. Now, as per the letter of credit, the LC based on the delivery of the documents, now the bank has 5 days to mature the LC. So once the delivery documents are given from the supplier to the SBI Bank sends a courier to the Riyadh Bank, apart from also making an email that we have sent these documents to you, and from the related department like bank manager, everybody, with the EXIM department. So this one, once the Riyadh Bank receives the delivery documents, same in the way like the supplier in the supplier's bank, accepting bank, initially when they received the letter of credit from the buyer's bank, they inform the supplier. In this same way, once these documents are received by Riyadh Bank, they will inform their customer, the buyer, who issued the LC to the supplier. They will inform the business customer, I mean like the buyer, that hey, you have got this delivery documents from this thing. So also the buyer, apart from that, also already knows the supplier's bank is going to send this one. So once they receive this thing, the deal is not completed yet, but the delivery documents are done. So now, once the delivery documents are okay, the issuing bank will activate the credit, will activate the LC, and the LC is then deposited, the LC amount, the credit amount, for after doing this delivery of documents, the credit amount from this issuing bank will be activated to transfer to the accepting bank. Excuse me for that. So this is the thing. So the issuing bank will activate the credit of the LC and the LC is accepted by the accepting bank. Accepting bank, the buyer receives the goods on the port based on the delivery of documents, and he will submit his title of goods to the ship's captain or CNF agent, and they will provide the goods to him, and from there this buyer takes these goods and they transfer it to their warehouse, or else like their end buyer's some warehouse or warehouse particularly. If he's going to use it or somewhere, wherever he needs it, that goods will be transferred by himself through the transportation whichever he wants. So this is the way he will receive his goods. The title of goods is transferred to him, and once he receives, he is happy, he is on his way, and the supplier who provided this thing, the accepting bank will provide his funds into his account. Now the supplier, accepting bank and the issuing bank, they will charge some kind of fee in this transaction. That is where the bank makes money, and this is how the import-export deal is done. There are many things apart from this thing. This is a straight away thing which I have told you based on the letter of credit. Okay. So the next thing I will say, I will make the video is about how a deal collapses if instead of this buyer and seller, if there are some agents and they are wanting to deal based on some kind of offers they found on the internet, or it's like based on the word of mouth, hearing from some people that they have a requirement somewhere in the country, they have a requirement somewhere outside the country, and how this thing happens and how the deal collapses and what is the problem with the account. So this is actually basically within the buyer and supplier directly. So as I have told you, there is no agent involved in this one. So now we will see how the agent will get involved and how the thing happens, and if the deal can happen properly, or else like if the deal will collapse. Okay, so thanks for that, and I'll get back to you in another video. Thank you.